Meantime,
Professional Workers in your association. Now, you're hitting and running still on your strike, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And they get the proper legal notice for your walkouts.
We've been given all the proper notice.
Now, what was this proposition which you put up today to Mr. Vander, and are you unhappy that he didn't instantly accept it when I gave him your telegram, he'd had it before, on the program?
Well, what we did is we proposed to Mr. Vander that we accept, HSA would accept, what has been offered to date on the first 2 years of what they have proposed as a 4-year agreement. So we take the first 2 years and we will forget the second 2 with reopeners. We'll make a clean break of it. We'll recommend that to our membership, and we'll immediately pull down our pickets and end the strike if he is agreeable to those terms.
Well, on the 4-year deal, as I understood it, the overall cumulative wage package was about 10.2%.
10.2 in the first 2 years. The last 2 are unknowns. They were supposed to be wage reopeners.
So you said we'll accept this 10.2, providing you make it a 2-year contract ending March 31, 1988, instead of a 4-year contract.
Precisely. Exactly the same numbers as offered to the nurses for 1986 and 87.
Now, we're going to have Peter McAllister of the H.L.R.A. on here after you have appeared. Can you make me a case for why you should get a 2-year deal instead of a 4-year deal?
Well, firstly, the nurses were given a 4, I guess if that's the basis of comparison, and 1 year is relating to 1985, and the nurses were given 2% for 1985. We already have a settlement, or did have a settlement for 1985 for 1%. The nurses got 1 more, and we're forgetting about history. But from that point on, for 1986, 87, we want to make a clean break of it, get off the confrontation. Here's an opportunity for both sides to walk away. It's not requiring the government to put up any more money. We can just put it out to the membership right now if the Premier said that's all right.
Well, now, obviously, it's still going to be in the hands of H.L.R.A. Have you had a direct reply from the Premier yourself?
I have not had a direct reply from the Premier myself.
He seemed to be concerned over the fact that you wanted the 10.2% in 2 years.
Exactly the same numbers as the nurses, 10, 2, and 2 years. That's exactly the same.
And you say that that's what you would take, but the original deal from H.L.R.A., which, did you not recommend that to your membership before?
No, we certainly did not. That was forced on us. We were told to take the 4-year package to the membership. If we went on strike, we'd be given another cooling off period. And we said...
Who told you that you had to take the 4-year package to membership?
We were constantly told by the Industrial Inquiry Commissioner that if we walked away from the hearings and did not take his recommendations out to the members to be voted on and tried to go on strike, we would receive a cooling off period.
Which would have stopped all strike activity as of right now.
Correct. And on that basis, we said, fine, we will take the package out to the membership, though we know they'll turn it down.
And you took the package to membership?
We tried to take the package to the membership. The package still hasn't been put together yet. We went out to explain to the membership what we were going to do, and they began voting with their feet. They were so upset with what they heard, they began walking out. And so we immediately got in line with them and turned it into a very well-organized strike and putting essential services in place.
We're talking about technical and professional workers in the hospital.
Yes.
And that would cover what particular hospital duties?
Well, the physiotherapists, occupational therapists, pharmacists, dietitians, social workers, 50 professional groups in all.
Now, don't you feel a little bit guilt-stricken, however, even if you are in unhappy negotiations at the moment, by walking out and leaving the patients at risk?
Well, the patients are definitely not at risk. We have established essential service committees in each hospital, and to date, the hospitals have been satisfied. The levels of staffing are sufficient, and if they require additional staff, they need only call, and they immediately receive the help that they want.
Have you prevented anybody from going into the hospitals as you've taken this strike action?
We have not. Our position was that we invited other unions to go to work if they wished. We were not trying to stop them. We were merely picketing down our own jobs.
Now, you were giving 72 hours advance warning of strike action a few days back, were you not?
Yes, we gave an initial 72-hour strike notice to Health Labor Relations, which is the bargaining agent for each hospital. We agreed in the beginning to give an additional 72-hour notice to each hospital before we struck. We then changed that sometime later and gave another letter to H.L.R.A. and said, you better put everyone else on notice. There will be no more individual 72-hour notices.
Now, you're telling me this voting with the feet has been done by sufficient of your 5,500 members to make it impossible for you to put this package to your membership?
If it still comes out in its initial form, it would undoubtedly have to go to the membership. But what we're saying, it's very clear it will be voted down, and in the meantime, we still have a strike in our hands. And we have an opportunity here to end the strike.
So you're saying to the man who follows you that you'll go back if all language items and minor monetary items is already agreed, stand on the contract?
Yes.
You get the wage increases for the first and second contract years, which is 10.2% in various lumps.
Yes.
And that there is no 4-year contract and no reopeners after March 31, 1988.
Just clean and simple. 2-year contract, easy to understand. We're not asking the government for any more money. Just say that that is a deal to put out to the membership, and we will recommend its acceptance to the membership, and we will take down the strike immediately.
How badly treated do you feel your people, how badly do you feel your technical and professional workers have been treated since March, since the contract expired?
I think that they are really being neglected because the amount of money that they're earning in comparison to the rest of Canada is really, really dreadfully low. But we're willing to walk away from some of those grievances to get a settlement now, and perhaps over the next year and a half, there can be sobering reflection on what needs to be done to close those gaps.
So what you want to do is to tie this down to a 2-year contract with 10.2% and not be hogtied for the next 2 years.
Absolutely, Jack.
Is that your point?
That's our point. Right on. Exactly.
Now, are your people underpaid, or are they, in these depressing days in British Columbia, reasonably well paid?
The people that we represent, by largest numbers, are underpaid by 14 to 18% against the 1985 rates in Ontario.
But they've only got 6% unemployed. They don't have a provincial government with $1 billion current deficit.
Right, so we're asking for something substantially less. And so built into that 10.2 is some adjustment factor to make up for those low rates within the limitations of CSP.
And this would be okayed by CSP, would it?
Well, I understand so because
Okay, the fact is that are you now continuing your walkouts?
Our walkouts are still continuing. We use this today as an opportunity to try to end them because there are more walkouts to take place tomorrow, and we're trying to get this thing resolved.
And you've got the backing of your membership?
I'll tell you, we have the absolute backing of our membership.
Did you have a balloted strike vote?
Two. We took the first one, and we were given a 90-day cooling-off period, and we weren't even heated up. And that necessitated taking a second vote, which was even higher.
How much?
88%.
Of how many people?
Of 5,500 members that we represent. And those people have never taken a strike vote before.
Okay, so if there is no settlement, doesn't look like any instant settlement, therefore we can prepare for you to walk out in half a dozen hospitals each and every day from now on.
It will go on unless we can find some resolution, and we are extending a hand to find that resolution. We want to end confrontation. We would like to have our members back in the hospitals. That's where they would like to be, and it won't cost the government any more money than what they've already put on the table.
My thanks to Jack Campbell, Executive Director of the Health Sciences Association. Next we'll have a short session with Peter McAllister, the President of Hospital Labour Relations Association, after the break.
We're comparing the Ford Taurus to the Audi 5000. The Taurus has more power, gets better mileage, and costs about $9,000 less than a comparably equipped Audi. With savings like that, you can afford a nice little option, a brand new Ranger pickup. So a Taurus and a Ranger, or an Audi, all by itself. You decide. Ford takes on the imports and wins. In Port Coquitlam, visit Metro Motors.
Take a look how little you pay.
You know, these Bay Sport Fleece separates are 40% off, exclusive to the Bay.
I know that.
8 different tops to choose from, 2 matching bottoms, $14.99 and $17.99.
Uh-huh.
And I suppose you know that all these separates come in 8 terrific colors, so you can mix and match for different looks.
Yeah.
How did you know all that?
I just put 2 and 2 together.
Yes, that's all it costs when you shop at the Bay.
That's all.
Sometimes you feel a little Mexican. try Chi-Chi's new Fiesta Sampler, a feast of Mexican favorites to share with family and friends. Appetizers, entrees, and dessert, all for a very tempting price. Chi-Chi's new Fiesta Sampler, when you feel a little Mexican.
$3.99 record or cassette. Now that's a nice price at A&B Sound, where October is CBS month. Choose any record or cassette from the Nice Price collection and pay only $3.99. Can't choose? Then how about a nicer price? Pick any 5 and pay only $18.99. It's nice to shop at A&B Sound when October is CBS month. So choose a nice price or a nicer price and save now at all A&B locations. Prices are down at A&B Sound.
Peter McAllister is president of the Hospital Labor Relations Association. Now, you negotiate for all the unions in all the hospitals.
That's correct. Virtually all of the majors and virtually all of the hospitals in the
But this
province.
time we're talking about the crisis with the Health Sciences Association and their 5,500 employees in hospitals throughout the province.
That's correct, but what we have to remember is it also affects other employees that are currently refusing to cross the picket lines that are set up by the Health Sciences Association.
But mind you, the picket, they just told me that they've left the place for the non-strikers to go through.
That doesn't seem to make any difference to the Hospital Employees Union, because that's one of our largest problems right now, is that as soon as those picket lines go up, the Hospital Employees Union employees that are working, pardon me, leave the job, and those that are scheduled on shift will not cross the picket
But
lines.
they do filter through, because we haven't had any great complaints from the hospitals about lack of bods.
We're before the Labor Relations Board right now. It's true that we haven't had any serious problem with Health Sciences Association people, but when our dietary people go out and when our housekeeping staff fail to report for work, we do have some serious manning problems in hospitals.
All right, now what about the telling? First of all, Mr. Vander has been active in this dispute, has he not?
Mr. Vander earlier on, I believe, Jack, it's fair to say, facilitated the getting back together of the parties. He, I believe, created a climate in which negotiations could recommence.
And indicated that you might up your offer.
Yes, and indeed, the product of all of that was the Industrial Inquiry Commissioner's proposal of last Wednesday evening, a proposal which the union had agreed to recommend to its members, and in conjunction with that, agreed to call off the planned strike action that was planned to get underway Thursday morning.
Well, I just had Mr. Campbell say to me that his members began to vote with their feet, and they haven't had even the opportunity to put the package to the membership. Do you accept that?
No, I don't. I think the logical way to do this, and the way that mature industrial relations, in my view, are conducted, is that package should have been formally put to the members. I think that the danger here is that the accurate details of the package do not get out in the intended form. So
you suggest to put to a vote that it would be ratified by the membership?
I don't know, Jack. I have no way of knowing that. But certainly, I believe the next step in this process should be for the Industrial Inquiry Commissioner, Mr. Long, to make his recommendations to the parties in writing, so that both parties can take a look at them. And I have members that have to ratify this contract as well.
You have not had the IIC report in writing yet?
We have not. We understand that Mr. Long was prepared to recommend a four-year package. The four-year deal was recommended to the nurses by another Industrial Inquiry Commissioner. The dollars were exactly the same. The percentage increases were exactly the same as the nurses, and the term of the collective agreement was exactly the same. So the package was, in effect, identical, save for the expiry dates of the two.
And there was also 1% for 85, which wasn't included in the comparison.
Yeah, well,
what
we did on the 1st of April '86, the first day of the new contract with the HSA, we gave the HSA exactly the same, or the report would have given HSA exactly the same as what the nurses got, and that followed right through the course of the agreement.
All right, now let me put Campbell's case to you. He said they proposed to settle on the following dispute: language items and minor monetary items as already agreed, as point one. Point two, the Industrial Inquiry Commissioner recommended wage increases for the first and second contract years of 10.2%.
I will not be put in a position of jeopardizing the deal that we have out there with the nurses. The nurses are currently in the process of ratifying, my members are in the process of ratifying a drastically different proposal, particularly with respect to length of agreement. That has to be considered as one proposal. And what the nurses did was agree to certain monetary levels of settlement And what we received in exchange for that was labor stability for 4 years.
So without indulging in on-air negotiations, the proposition that you take a 2-year contract ending March 31, 1988, with a 10.2% built in these various ways, is not acceptable.
That's correct. It's not acceptable. I think what we could look at, and the only thing at this juncture that we could look at, is Mr. Long's written recommendations, and we would anticipate and hope that they would be down very, very quickly.
Well, Mr. Vander Zalm didn't commit himself either way today. He merely said that he knew it was a 4-year contract. But there is no way you would expect Mr. Vander Zalm to tell you to accept this deal.
No, we're the accredited bargaining agent, recognized by the Labor Code as the accredited bargaining agent, and it seems to me just to be an end run that the union is playing 2 days before an election. And I don't believe the Premier wants to get involved, nor do I think it would be appropriate at this point for him to become involved.
Well, what about the state of your hospitals when you're going to have these hit-and-run walkouts? You've had the overall 72 hours advance strike warning, but now you're not getting daily warning on them until it happens.
We've lodged a complaint with the Labor Relations Board, Jack. We believe that the union is both legally and morally obligated to provide each and every hospital with adequate notice so that the hospitals can put their contingency plans into place. We don't believe that they have the legal right to avoid that notice. And in point of fact, in 2 instances today, at Grand Forks and 100 Mile House, they did not serve the appropriate strike notice, and we're challenging that before the Labor Relations Board.
What is appropriate, 72 hours?
72-hour strike notice, in our view, must be served on each individual hospital.
For the day they're going to be closed down?
Yes, that's correct.
It has been one-day closures, by and large.
Yes, and in 10 instances, the appropriate notice has been served. In 2 instances today, appropriate notice, in our view, has not been served.
But it's quite clear that the object of H.L.R.A. is to have a comparable contract length with the nurses to give you 4 years stability.
Absolutely, and we also are concerned that about the continuation of quality patient care to the public as well. That's a primary concern of my organization and our hospital. My
thanks to Peter McAllister, President of H.L.R.A. Next, we're going to give you political highlights from Skelly and Vander Zalm. After the break.
The scale shows why so many people prefer extra-strength Anacin. Here are 2 regular tablets, and here are 2 extra-strength Anacin. Extra-strength Anacin tips the scales because it contains more medicine.
How do you improve a nasal spray? We ask.
Well, it's fast. Now make it last longer.
So we did. Long-lasting nasal mist by Dristan lasts 3 times longer than our regular spray.
Just for the light of it, the smooth taste of it. Diet Coke, just for the just for the taste of it. From Coca-Cola, Diet Coke, Diet Coke. I put my foot to the boards for the place that's lucky for me. Picked 5 out of 40 in the game called Lotto BC. They had a bucket ain't out of sight. It's the easiest game to play all right. 5 numbers in a row can make you rich by Saturday night. Lotto BC is 20 times easier to win than the big lotto. So 5 numbers in a row can make you rich by Saturday night. That's Lotto night.
All gas stations are not created equal. Get super service at Super Save Gas.
Oh, we like the prices, we like the service. You know, there aren't too many places that have full service anymore.
Wash the windshields, check the oil, that sort of thing. Very friendly, helpful, very helpful.
I can just pull in, they take care of my gas, they check my oil, and they clean my windows, and they send me on my way very quickly.
Super Save Gas means gas at Super Save prices.
Next time you need gas, fill up at Super Save.
There's no ball game tonight, so I'm taking this opportunity to give you the highlights of 2 recent major political interviews with Mr. Vander Zalm, which I did earlier today, and with Bob Skelly, leader of the NDP. And the first question on this edited version is it not a fact, Mr. Skelly, that as we stand right now, with our labor troubles and our economic troubles and the countervail, that nobody can promise an extra nickel for anything in the coming year of a new government?
Nobody can promise anything who is not at the same time promising an expansion of the economy, an expansion of employment, and an expansion of the revenue base of the province.
How can you promise?
Mr. Vander Zalm is not. We are promising an expansion of the revenue base of the province by expanding the economy of British Columbia.
These sound wonderful words, but with our reduced labour force, we've got 40,000 fewer people working in the province. Which economy are you going to expand and how? Government services, more taxes on the backs of people?
Can't be done, because the Socreds have already jacked up taxes in this province unmercifully. They've jacked up rates, they've jacked up user fees, they've jacked up Medicare fees, hospital user fees, all of those things that people in the province of British Columbia pay in addition to their taxes have also been increased by the social credit
And
government.
if they hadn't done that, what would the current debt and newly borrowed money be this year?
In spite of that, Jack, the deficit in this province has accumulated to $5.1 billion. We're paying more in interest on that deficit than we're paying in total grants and aid to municipalities in this province. But this year, we're running up an $872 million deficit. We're borrowing that money to pay for the number of people on welfare in the province of British Columbia. That's all under social credit mismanagement. That's the reason why we're in such difficulty in this province today.
I have your list of promises right in front of me. Net cost of NDP programs, $1.143 billion.
Absolutely.
And you're gaily going to throw $417 million into education, another $300 million into gain reform. You're going to throw $300 million into reforestation, municipal works $240 million, housing $40 million, and a youth guarantee of $150 million. When would this pie in the sky appear? 10 years down the road?
First of all, it's not pie in the sky. And first of all, it's being done, and it's being done successfully in other countries around North America, other states and provinces around North America, and in other countries around the world. What we're saying is let's look at programs elsewhere in the world that have contributed to successful economies, and let's adopt those programs for here in British Columbia.
Take you a long time if you were to win the government, wouldn't it? I mean, don't tell me you're going to promise this next year.
Some of these programs can be implemented immediately. Certainly in the first year of a reforestation program, you're not going to spend $300 million right off the top. It does not deliver the effect by throwing money at the problem.
Okay.
What we have to do is to move into that program gradually, increase by employing more and more people until you're spending the full $300 million allocation. We intend to do that as quickly as possible. Look at the case of Manitoba. Establish the Jobs Fund, set up millions of dollars in funding, put 33,000 people back to work in Manitoba. Today in Manitoba, they have the lowest unemployment rate in Canada at 5.9%.
Let's look at the image of this man, Skelly. And I'm going to paraphrase some of your promises, which makes the social credit to say, that man's crazy. Assistance for rape and violence, yes. Bigger government subsidies for daycare, absolutely. Better pay for daycare workers. Higher welfare rates, yes, 30 to 60%. Aid for everybody. Elimination of Medicare premiums, yes. Guaranteed annual income scheme. Are you not really going for the old socialist pie in the sky?
Remember, Jack, one of the criteria for our programs is that those programs must be self-financing. They must pay a net return to the people of this province. Let's look at the issue of making more daycare places available. Take a look at the state of Massachusetts. They wanted to get women off the welfare rolls in the state of Massachusetts. What they did was they provided daycare subsidies and they provided transportation subsidies. The result, 25,000 people off the welfare rolls back at work. Massachusetts in 1975 had a $500 million deficit. In 1985, a $575 million surplus, and declared the largest tax cut in the state's history.
You certainly couldn't do that with daycare in British Columbia.
These programs
What about
work.
education?
These programs work.
$417 million into education. Where are you going to get it?
We have indicated that we are going to reprioritize the provincial budget. Look, where does social credit...
What does that mean?
Where did social credit get $802 million for Expo? Where did they get $1 billion for H.L.R.A? Where did they get
They borrowed it.
$400 million for the Annacis Island
They
crossing?
borrowed it.
Where did they get $357 million for the Coquihalla Highway? Where did they get $700 million for Northeast Coal?
Can't
They borrowed every nickel.
And you would do the same thing
Or-
for your particular reprioritization.
They borrowed it, or they took it out of provincial budgets. They stole it from education. They stole it from health care. They stole it from government services. They fired child abuse teams in the province of
One
British
child
Columbia.
abuse team.
They fired counselors for child abuse in schools all over the province of
Would you
BC.
put back into the schools the one-on-one, the extra help, the teachers' assistants, and rehire a number of school teachers? Would you do that?
We have indicated that we will go from school board to school board around this province. We will consult with them as to what personnel and financial resources are needed to restore quality in those school districts, and we will make those financial and personnel resources available to
We've
those
got
school
to talk briefly about this incredible promise you have of jobs or training or school for youth between 15 and 24. How much would that cost you? 150 million in the first year.
Right now, we have 54,000 of our young people who are unemployed. They're either getting welfare. In some cases, if they've been lucky enough to work under the current UIC regulations, they're getting unemployment insurance. In other words, they're a net drag on the economy. We estimate that that's costing us more than $150 million.
So you
what we're saying is let's get those young people on a contract basis over a 2-year period and get them back into the education stream, back into vocational training, or into employment at a cost of $150 million. We'll be saving money over welfare.
Even my eyebrows went up when you said job security for the IWA, that you would legislate the positions in a bargaining unit.
No.
And that would solve the current IWA dispute.
No.
Surely that's what you said.
We
Guarantee job security.
No, you cannot guarantee job security. What we have indicated is we will bring in legislation which very similar to legislation in Western Europe, in Scandinavia, in France, in Germany, in Belgium, the Netherlands, in Japan.
Oh, don't name any more countries. But we've got detailed union contracts under which the union at the moment gives technological change, more efficiency, and has procedures whereby people can be bumped. How can you improve on that? You can't help Monroe unless you say the positions in a bargaining unit are protected.
What this legislation would say is that any change that takes place within a company's operations which affect the jobs of the workers must first of all have notification well in advance of that change taking place. So the unions will understand, so the workers will understand exactly what changes are about to take place and what adjustments they must make as workers to accommodate those changes. Secondly, a mechanism has to be set up between government, between the workers, and between the corporation to make sure that workers do not suffer as a result of the changes that take place in corporate flexibility.
But how can you say that when the big scream of the employers here is, if they don't get flexibility, if they can't do contracting out, they cannot survive in the marketplace. And you're coming in with protective socialist legislation which would cripple the big companies.
This legislation is in effect even in conservative Holland today. They wouldn't throw out that legislation just because it's labeled socialist. Look, here's what happens. What they do is a worker who's committed his whole life to the enterprise, his intelligence, his energy to the enterprise, is his investment in that enterprise is valued just as much as capital investment.
Providing the company doesn't go broke, he's all right.
And if that worker's investment in labor is valued, then he's going to make sure the company doesn't go broke as well. So what is done, Jack, in the second part of the process is that worker, if he's old enough, is pensioned off early or he's retrained and placed elsewhere in the economy.
You're talking about European labor relations which don't seem to apply in British Columbia at the moment.
And Japanese, where if unemployment goes up to 2.9% in Japan, there's riots in the streets. I think we should be valuing the investment that workers place in an enterprise instead of throwing them off like so many spare parts.
Does it not depend on the balance sheet?
Can we afford to, Jack? When those workers are tossed out of the enterprise and they end up in the lap of the government and we have to pay their UIC, we have to pay their welfare, we have to pay their medical plans, we have to pay their housing.
We have to create money, though, and wealth, and we've got to sell our stuff abroad because we're a very hard-hit primary resource province.
But I'll tell you, Social Credit's response to that is, yeah, toss them out of the enterprise. We'll look after them on the welfare system. We'll run up a deficit of $1 billion annually, an accumulated deficit of $5 billion.
It is socialism or free enterprise, really.
No.
This election.
No.
Next question.
We want to help enterprises become more competitive, but not on the backs of their workers.
Bob Skelly, aired Friday. Next, the highlights of Bill Vander Zalm, aired this afternoon between 4 and 4:30 on a special election broadcast after this break.
This is 100% Colombian coffee, famous for its legendary flavor. And this is also 100% Colombian, new Nabob Summit. They're both Colombian, they both taste the same, right? Wrong. Because only the very best beans from here are good enough to go in here. And they make all the difference in new Nabob Summit. A taste we'd call a cut above.
It's McCain Light Delight tonight, and it's chicken supreme in a savory sauce. This and all other McCain Light Delight dinners are under 300 calories. Taste the fabulous fish amandine. It's McCain Light Delight tonight.
Get the right taste of fries. McCain Super Fries give you that right taste, deep fried flavor and crispness, and they're made especially for your oven. Hey, get the right fries. Get the Super Fries from McCain.
Make way for the new generation of pickups.
Make way! Make way!
The all-new Dodge Dakota, North America's first mid-size pickup. Dakota's got the easy handling of a small pickup, the power and cargo space of a full-size, room for 3 inside, and the Ram-Tough Dodge warranty all round. New mid-size Dakota.
Make way for Dodge Dakota! Make way!
Try it on for size.
What you got for lunch, Joy? Ham sandwich and apple and cheese. Cheese? I'll trade you my cookie for cheese. No. For half sandwich? No, but I kind of always like your bike, Scott.
Cheddar cheese. For Scott and Joey and you, it's always the answer. It's practically indispensable. So always have enough.
Cheese, please.
Premier Vander Zalm is Minister of Finance as well, and the Vander Zalm interests owe the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce $5.7 million connected with the gardening operation. I raised this question of conflict of interest, perceived, with Premier Vander Zalm earlier this afternoon, and here is how we're going to present it. What position does the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce hold with the government in the form of doing business?
Well, the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce isn't the only bank that does business with the government, but it happens to be probably the main one to do business with government.
Right.
In that they handle the daily accounts.
What loans do you, and I'm saying you because we know what we're talking about,
company
have with this big financial institution which depends on the government for much of its business?
Well, it's all done by debentures, and it's properly done. It was done before I became the Premier and the Minister of Finance, and it amounts to, I think, perhaps in the order of maybe, guessing a bit, but $5 million.
$5.7 million, correct?
Yes, could well be that.
And you, you're the Premier of Finance dealing with this bank, and you're Premier and Minister of Finance, would a bank dare to call the loan of the Premier or Minister of Finance were he to get into a problem?
Well, they're not dealing with the Premier directly or the Minister of Finance, number one. They're dealing not with Bill Vander Zalm directly, number one. They're dealing with the business, and they have debentures from the business, and all of the payment schedules and everything is properly laid out. Now, there isn't a business in British Columbia, at least I don't think there are too many this day and age, that don't owe money from time to time to some financial institution. You can't be in business and not owe money at some time.
But, sir, you don't seem to realize you are the Premier and you are the Minister of Finance.
Yeah.
And you and your interests have to make payments of about $600,000 a year on those loans.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct?
That's probably just about right.
Okay, you're the open government man. What kind of cash flow do you have to meet $600,000 a year?
Well, that's not open government, that's open business. You'll have to ask Lillian in all fairness, but still, the business will do sufficient cash flow to make those payments, obviously, or the loans would not have been granted. It's not that easy to get money from a bank this day and age. But, Jack...
You don't accept my definition of a conflict of interest, whereby the appearance that a public office holder may benefit is a conflict of interest and a serious one.
I have said already that if I thought there was a conflict in any of these areas, I would obviously move it out.
Let me put it to you, when you're selecting your colleagues, would you put in as finance minister a colleague who owed the CIBC $5.7 million? Would you not say, hoi, 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 that's a conflict? He could be influenced by that loan. That big loan is all of his family fortunes are in that. Would you appoint a colleague as finance minister if you knew he owed the bank $5.7 million?
Well, I suppose...
I mean, to the pure, all things are pure. And please forgive me if in any way you think I'm not questioning your personal integrity.
No, I appreciate that. And I guess perhaps the question is fairly put. But it depends on, you know, if there was within the government a business person that really had success and extensive business involvements, now offered himself to be in government, was a candidate, a good candidate for the Ministry of Finance, would I exclude that person simply because he's got successful businesses, which in itself means that he's obviously dealing with banks?
SkyTrain. People are flashing around the SkyTrain, a unique investment opportunity. It's a kind of lease, the ferry deals, you know, sell the ferries and lease them back. Is there any government interest in this SkyTrain guaranteed unit capital gain bit which is being distributed?
Well, what happened back in March, April or so, Pemberton's put this proposal to the Ministry of Finance. They get these proposals quite regularly. And I suppose they've been sitting on it. Somebody apparently in the other organization, I guess Pemberton, somehow got a brown envelope to Williams. At least that's what I'm told.
Is it part of your plan?
No, it's not part of the plan at all. But, you know, Finance really has to report on it. If they think there's some merit to these proposals, they'll bring it to Cabinet. They've never brought it.
Would only be any good as long as the Tories leave in this $500,000 cumulative capital gain anyway down the road.
I suppose it was presented on the grounds that it gives British Columbia an opportunity to invest and get some tax breaks back from the feds.
Why have you lifted the absolute ban on the export of red cedar? You were involved in a brouhaha today about that, and it was the action taken by you and the feds after the 35% impost on shake mills.
Yeah, we don't export any shakes or shingle, or we don't export any cedar to the USA, blocks or trees or logs or anything. We do, from time to time, permit by special permit exports of logs to Asia, but only when there's some place where they have to be logged because of disease or bugs or they're inaccessible otherwise, and you can't ship them to a local mill. There's no local market for them. In other words, the loggers have cut the trees because they've got to be cut.
They can't put them on the deck of a ship, take them out down the point, and run them into the United States.
These particular cedars that they're referring to now were second growth so knotty they couldn't be used for cedar shingles or shakes by anyone.
You failed in your effort to get the IWA and FIR together, right?
No. I did get them together. I just failed to sell my proposal. I wish you had time to listen to my proposal. I think it's a great one.
I know what it was. It was a commissioner reporting June 14th, 1987.
Now, first of all, I said companies no more contracting out for 1 year. Include in the 1 year contract all of the pension provisions. IWA, send the men back to work. If you don't want to send them back to work, have them take a vote. We'll appoint a mediator for 2 weeks. If the mediator can't get it together after 2 weeks, we'll get Chief Justice Nemetz to appoint a commissioner. The commissioner will take the Hutchin report and the findings from companies and IWA and wherever else and bring in a written report by the end of the year. You accept the written report, game over, fine, we're okay. If not, we'll put it into
Monroe
legislation.
tells me he was misled in that he was told at one stage that the Hutchin words in contracting out would be included in the deal, but when he met with the boys from FIR, they said, no way.
No, listen,
You had David Poole there, and Monroe thinks he got that from David Poole.
No way did he get it from David Poole or from myself.
Okay.
David Poole was with me, obviously.
Next
I'm up
question.
against 16 people in both rooms.
The HSA have given you a basis to settle their dispute, you know, the technicians and professional workers, by accepting these 3 points, which include 10.2 wage increases on a 2-year contract instead of 4 years. Will you go for that?
Well, first of all, it was addressed to me. It should be addressed to the H.L.R.A, the body that negotiates on behalf of government.
You don't want to get into that.
But the only thing I can say, I don't think there would be any objection to the same sort of deal as the nurses got. That's fine. But what they're asking for is 2 years as opposed to what the nurses got over the 4 years.
2 years instead of
they've got to
4-year
get back to H.L.R.A and get their act together and see if they can agree.
Back to your boo-boos, if you don't mind. Quote from Bill Vander. Mind you, you've been very good considering your previous record. You've really been very restrained this time round. It would be ideal if women could stay home. They would prefer it. Now, do you want to recant and bring back all the liberated and near-liberated women into your fold?
No, this has had a lot of play in the media. But
You're a good boy at playing the media. You are the expert.
Yeah, what I said, though, is that it would be good if they could stay home if they would prefer it. There's not the choice for most women now. If they have children, chances are they've got to go to work because one income isn't sufficient to pay the mortgage and the rest of it. But if they could somehow stay home, it would be better for everyone, I'm sure.
Now, you did
given that choice.
You moved your initial...
I'm not forcing them.
This is not a social credit platform, this campaign. It's the Vander Zalm view, isn't it? Everything you say is not thought out by caucus. It's the Vander Zalm view.
Well, no, these are things that social credit has taken positions on in the past, and we're reiterating them.
Okay.
Although we're not getting into heavy monetary promises for obvious reasons.
For example, you started out being very cautious about the minimum wage, and then you suddenly came to $4 an hour, if you liked it.
Well, we had made a decision. What happened is we had made a decision. First of all, I was questioned sometime before the election was called about the minimum wage. And my response at the time was that we would review it and we would look at what the impact of the minimum wage and how it might best be dealt with. Then it was before the government. The government made a decision, but it wasn't released because of the election. And I was asked about it on the floor of some meeting, and I said, yes, it will be increased. The review will still take place, but it will be increased. We've got to act upon it. And then I was asked further as to what the amount might be, and I said the federal minimum wage is the most likely number that we would arrive at. The federal minimum wage is now $4.
These are highlights of Mr. Vander Zalm's interview earlier this afternoon. But I couldn't obviously show you the whole thing again, along with the piece from Skelly and the HSA coverage. But I'm happy to tell you I've got 10 or 11 minutes for a free-for-all on politics and what you think of the Vander Zalm view or the Skelly socialism and how much it will affect your vote on Wednesday, which is the day after tomorrow, when you decide the fate of British Columbia's political future. Free for all after the break.
Off to put out another fire, Griswold?
Well, Chief, I found that
I assume you called first?
Right, flights booked.
Oh?
Cars rented. Got the best room in town.
I see.
And Max has reserved my usual table.
And?
And then I called our customer and straightened out the whole mess by long distance.
Stick around, Griswold. You'll go far.
Business long distance from BC Tel.
Don't stop now.
Lax's photography. You'll be smiling. Lax's. Oh, you'll be laughing. Photography. Bring back those memories that we shared. Hey, you're looking good. Any way you look at it, Lax's photography. It's when we say, oh, you don't pay.
We're comparing the Ford Escort to the Honda Civic.
For 4 years, the Ford Escort has been the #1 selling car in the world. The Honda isn't #1 in Japan. The Escort has more room and more power. And with the Escort, you can afford a nice little option like a fur coat or maybe a diamond ring, because the Escort costs about $1,000 less than a comparably equipped Civic. You decide. Ford takes on the imports and wins. In Richmond, visit Richport Ford.
It has been, and I've been in the campaigns in this province since 1949, an unusual campaign. It had its moments of W.A.C. Bennett type of campaign, when he was a one-man band and the province was told what he would do, and that was it. Now, I'm just going to take your reaction both on these interviews and your general political feelings, and we'll start here. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yes, yes.
I thought the two interviews were really interesting. I'm one of these people who are making up my mind at the very last minute. And what came out in your interviews for me was the fact that Skelly is a very sincere, very honest man. He's got some ideas, and you asked him questions about his ideas, and I got a clear idea of what he's going to try and do. When you spoke to Vander Zalm, you didn't question him on what he's going to do after the election. I really have no idea what this man is going to do after the election. And judging on everything I've seen and the final bit of interviews you've just done, I think I'm going to vote for a party, the NDP, because they've got some ideas. I've got some clear ideas of what they're going to do when they're elected. I have no idea what the Social Credit Party is going to do if it's elected. And they will not get my vote as
Thank you. Fair enough. It hasn't been a question very much of issues on the right. It's been issues on the left. But I got to give both sides a little pat in the back for not getting us into this hysterical, godless socialism or free enterprise caper from which we suffered for far too many years. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack. Yes, I'd like to know what you think of Mr. Vander Zalm's appointment as a minister of a man with a criminal record, meaning Bill Reid.
Well, I think it's a little bit late to start that kind of thing. Mr. Reid served the punishment in the way of publicity for that particular offence, and I think that's a bit under the belt on this occasion right now. That's a case of somebody looking for something to throw into the ring right now. That's what used to be called a little bit of a roar back. And if you don't know what a roar back is, look it up in the political dictionary somewhere. I thought I might well have faced criticism tonight because of my somewhat lengthy questioning between 4 and 4:30 of Mr. Vander Zalm on his, what I perceived as an apparent conflict of interest. But the other stuff, that's for the history books, I think. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's pretty neat how Mr. Vander Zalm's mouth is moving all the time, and nothing really seems to be coming out his way as the issues. Yeah, Mr. Skelly's mouth is moving all the time, and we're going to be very, very much in debt if he gets it.
Well, I think that's the one hard political fact of life that both of these candidates tended to forget in the early part of the campaign. As Mr. Vander Zalm says, $1 billion overspent in the current year, covered by borrowings from the banks. And it's just a fact of life. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm really sorry I didn't get in to talk to Mr. Vander Zalm because I wanted to ask him a specific question. Like, I would really like to open a business, a legal business to get and I'd like the government to be able to give me a license. However, thing is, it's a farming license, a TFL license.
A tree farm license?
Right.
Well, there's nothing like starting at the top, is it?
That's right, and I don't know why I can't get one.
Well, if you
why can't you ask him something like that?
Well, if you write me a letter about that, I shall very quickly snicker at it, tear it up, and throw it in the basket. Thank you very much, ma'am. A woman with a sense of humor, to say the least. Go ahead, please.
Your expression, pie in the sky, Jack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes?
Certainly hits the mark with regard to the socialist program. Who wants to read what they're doing in Massachusetts?
Well,
oh, man, that's ridiculous.
Thank you, sir. I do my best to be reasonably non-partisan in my attacks on each of the parties, or all of the parties, and the major candidates. And I think Mr. Vander Zalm was he couldn't quite understand why I was tackling him in conflict of interest today. But he did seem to concede that it would be very difficult if he were to appoint a cabinet colleague to the position of Minister of Finance, a man who owed a big government customer bank $5.7 million. That's a kind of ethical question I would put to any political leader at any time. But as I said in Mr. Vander Zam's defense, to the pure, all things are pure. Go ahead, please. I don't know where that quote comes from.
Yes, I just hope that we all don't have too short of memories to remember what Mr. Vander Zalm was when he was the Minister of Education plus the Minister of Human Resources. Even if his mother-in-law is not going to vote for him, how the heck do you think we're going to vote for him?
Well, whose mother-in-law? My mother-in-law would never have voted for me, I'll tell you that. Nothing to do with politics. She never did like me very much. Oh, hope she forgives me, whatever she is. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes.
How come you didn't have Mr. Skelly on? You had Vander Zalm on. I didn't see the show in the daytime.
We had Skelly on last Friday on a special election broadcast between 4 and 4:30 because of the problems created by the ball games, which caused the normal Webster program to be interrupted. But today I put on 9 minutes of Skelly from the last Friday's program and 9 minutes of Vander Zalm from today's program. I'm just sorry you missed it, sir. Because it was on, wasn't it, Steve? Honest to goodness, Skelly was on. Go ahead, please.
Hello, I'd just like to make one comment. Mr. Vander Zalm made a statement a while back that said the province was losing $10 million a day because of the forest industry strike. And I have no way of knowing whether those figures are right, but I would like to make one comment on it. As hard as he'd like to try right now, that there's going to be no settlement in the forest industry until after this election, because Jack Monroe is going to keep all those thousands of people off the job because he doesn't want Vander Zalm to get 1 inch of credit that maybe he did something that helped settle a thing. And I think that's just criminal on Monroe's part, and I would say that it's probably endorsed fully by Skelly, and this province can't afford the IWA out on strike, and that's personal crap by those guys that are keeping all these people out of work. And I just think it's atrocious, and they should be run out of BC.
Well, I think you run out of BC is a bit much, but you're fully entitled to your view on the subject. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jack.
Yeah.
I'm a little disappointed in you.
Okay.
You start on Skelly and asked him some specifics on the election. And you candy dance and be Mr. Nicey with Vander Zalm.
Not true.
What do you mean, not true?
Did you see the full interview I did at 4 o'clock this afternoon on conflict of interest?
No, but I'm talking about on this interview that you had with both of them.
Yeah, well, I nicely. I was pulling his leg.
You were Mr. Nicey,
Nonsense.
Jack. Now, come off it.
Nonsense. Go put on your Peddly King jacket.
What?
Go put on your Peddly King jacket.
Yeah, many years ago.
Okay, boy, I knew it. You could spot him a mile away. But he's right. Sometimes people say I'm nice, some people say I'm nasty. I didn't realize I'd been quite as hard on Skelly until I saw the rebroadcast. I think I was similarly hard on Vander Zalm, especially on the conflict of interest. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'm going to vote Liberal because I want an alternative to both the NDP and the social credit. I'm a physiotherapist, and I heard Peter McAllister say that health care is affected because of the strike. And it's affected right now because there's such a high shortage of physiotherapists and OTs who'd like to make $3 more an hour by just crossing over the border into Alberta.
$3 more an hour?
At least.
Well, most of them have got husbands here, so they don't go to Alberta.
But the fact is that there's no recognition for the, for the wage differential. And also, when the last settlement, the HSA settled for 20% and the nurses got 44%. And that is why we want to catch up with the nurses. They're ahead of us.
Well, I can't argue with the detail on that because I don't know enough about it, but I put both sides on to give it their best shot. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Yes, hello?
Hello?
Yeah. One of the things that I really enjoyed about this election, at least on the part of the one party, is in regards to the fact that Vander Zalm did not throw any mud at any time during the election. And even though the other parties were throwing mud at him, never once did he stoop to their level of trying to hurt them or whatever. And it's really refreshing to see. He was really a fresh breeze into politics in the British Columbia, really.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
Hello. I was happy to see the debate. I guess it's the closest we're going to come to a real debate. But I just wanted to say that before I saw this, I hadn't really seen Skelly speak, and I was surprised how well he did. I thought the man couldn't chew gum and walk at the same time after hearing all the stuff on the radio and the television before.
He was not President Ford by any manner of means.
No, that's for sure.
Well, I'm glad.
He did a very good job, and I think it was interesting he was bringing out those comments from other countries and that he could take ideas from other countries. It doesn't matter what kind of country they are. They got some good ideas that we can use here to put our people back to work and to get good schools.
Hardly practical, though, in the forest industry as far as an instant settlement is concerned. I can tell you that without being unfair to anyone. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I think Skelly forgot that in Japan, the wages are way less than ours, aren't they?
And they also work much longer hours, and the whistle blows in the afternoon. It doesn't mean go home. It means the start of overtime.
Right. Didn't we have trouble right here at what the girls were making, and they were quite happy to be here? You can't bring up Japan's wages against ours.
No, Japan is a whole totally different culture. Well, jolly good show. Sorry I've been preempted some nights. Done my best to catch up on it as quickly as I can. And I'll have a couple of little things to tell you after this break.
Introducing the ultimate heavy-duty bathroom cleaner from Lysol. Now that's more than just clean. That's Lysol clean.
Instant coffee may taste close to fresh ground, but close doesn't count anymore. Because there's Heritage. It's the only instant coffee to take freshly ground coffee and add it directly to the granules of instant. So you're not tasting close to fresh ground, you are tasting fresh ground in an instant. Heritage. Close doesn't count anymore.
In the world of multivitamins, Paramets offers a special multivitamin for each age group to help maintain good health. One Paramets formula is not for everyone. There's children's chewables with or without iron. For the adolescent, there's Paramets Teen Formula. For adults, there's the Paramets Basic Formula and the Super Formula. And for later in life, there's Paramets 50+. In a world of choice, there is a Paramets for your age group. Remember, you're one of a kind.
What's this stuff? Some cereal. It's supposed to be good for you. Did you try it? I'm not going to try it. You try it. I'm not going to try it. Let's get Mikey. Yeah. He won't eat it. He hates everything. He likes it. Hey, Mikey.
Quaker Life Cereal. Don't tell the family it's one of those nutritional cereals you've been trying to get them to eat. You're the only one who has to know. Quaker Life Cereal.
When the polls close Wednesday, there's only one place to watch to get the best and most informed results and the quickest results, and hopefully some of the brighter commentary. And that is BCTV, because of the vast news organization, Tony Parsons, and I'll be sticking my nose in too. Don't miss it. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you.
Le candlelight, le music, le flowers, le menu. Oh, le menu. Le breast of chicken parmigiana, succulent and tender with zesty tomato sauce.